Hello everyone, in today's video I will be narrating stories that I found off of Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But without further ado,
let's get straight into these stories.
The following events took place over the space of a year. It took me a while to link them all and realize what had happened, so I'm going to try and relate it as I experienced it. I'm 31 now, but this took place when I was roughly 18. For the majority of my career, I've been a support worker. This involves supporting adults with learning disabilities / health issues in their own homes and out in the community, basically with all and any aspects of their lives. The job involves long hours and often sleepovers or waking nights. In this case, the other two staff members went home at 8 at night or 10 at night depending on if the service users were overnighting at their parents', which was a regular occurrence, and the sleepover would stay with the remaining clients in case they had a health concern or needed support with something overnight. At the time, I was working in a service with 3 young men who were very active within their community. This meant I was also very active in their community, out and about all the time helping them to and from work during college / work / recreational. We got the bus a lot because they had concession passes. I live in the United Kingdom and can't drive, so I commuted to and from work on public transport. Keep a watch, the service we worked in was based across the road from a nursing home or possibly a respite center. To this day, I'm unsure what it actually is / was. This building had parking spaces outside it intended for that facility, but after certain hours anyone could use them. At 10 every night I was on shift. Whether I was a sleepover or finishing for the day, a car would park across from us and shine its high beams right through our window. This would also light up the adjacent front door, so anyone interested could see who was leaving. Even though the clients were in bed by this time, there was still a lot to do for the remaining staff member, like ensuring the property was secured and the fire doors throughout the house were closed. Just general health and safety things. So a car across the road blinding our staff as they left was low down on the list of concerns. Personally, I assumed that it was also the facility staff going home. 10 at night is a normal finishing time in the care sector. This went on for a few months before one eagle-eyed colleague told me this only happened on days when I would come into work. We made a joke about how I had a fancy man picking me up, but I wrote it off. Charting my movements, not really an event, but whilst out and about with the people I supported, they would often say my name, "That man is looking at you." My service users were young men who liked to joke and had limited mental capacity, so often their jokes did not seem like jokes but were intended as such. This started with one client specifically. I worked with him more than the others because I was his key worker, which meant I had additional duties relating to that client, which included arranging special outings / events. But before long they were all telling me there was a man who was staring at me / following me. They often said this in crowded public areas, and because they struggled to communicate they could never describe him fully, but one of them said it was always the same man, and they gave the odd vague detail which we pieced together into a wider description and will be relevant later. Again, the other staff found it odd this behavior was only directed at me. They never said this to anyone else, though they did say it in the presence of other staff if I was part of the group. The escalation, this event had such an impact that I still don't use public transport alone in the evening. I got a call from the mother of the person I was supporting that day. He had earlier gone for a visit to his parents and his brother was home from university, so they decided he would sleep over so he could spend the following day with his brother. It was 7:30 in the afternoon and dark because it was winter. I had worked over my contracted hours that month as we were short-staffed, so I called on our call manager who offered me an early finish. I did all the admin care quality commission work required us to do daily, cheerily said goodbye to everyone before leaving to catch the 8 at night bus. It had been laundry day, so I had been ironing and hadn't eaten the food I had brought with me. I called my partner at the time, and because I had to pass through the city center, I decided to grab us a chicken bucket and pick up the newest Dance of Dragons book, which I had pre-ordered from Waterstones as it was December and the shops were open late for Christmas. I got off the bus, wearing my headphones as usual, picked up the book, walked down to the fast food place to get the bucket of chicken, which was next to the metro, underground / subway station, got my food and was on my way down the steps to the ticket barrier. Halfway down the steps I had a tap on my shoulder. I had my hands full of chicken, so turned, unable to take my headphones out, to see a man who I assumed was asking about which line he should be on or something. Anyway, I tried to brush him off, but he followed me to the barrier. He bought a ticket, but I had a pass, which I scanned, but he ran down the escalator to catch up with me. As I was sitting on the platform, he sat next to me. It was late and people were sparse and spread out. It was super uncomfortable that he had all this space and chose to invade mine. Having a seat for my chicken, I took a headphone out because he seemed angry with me. He was rambling, but in a nutshell he told me he has seen me about often with different men, people I was supporting I assume. Sometimes I'm in a group with people much older. I assume my coworkers as I was the youngest employed there. He said a lot of odd things which didn't actually register as creepy until I got home. He said I live on road I work on and often go between two houses. At the time we had another service a few doors up again with 3 young men. That was my original service, but it was better conditions at my current service, so I had hopped over when they needed staff. It was ran by the same company. As I knew the service users, I'd often cover there if they needed me, rather than call agency staff. He described my commute, including times, the clothing I wore, which was dress code, that I was either with someone or had headphones in. He said my hair changed a lot. I had semi-permanent colors that I changed regular. There was a lot that looking back indicated he had been watching me a while, but I was tired, and he was rambling, and I wanted him to go away. He was inexplicably angry at me, and saying he just wanted to look after me, and I kept ignoring him. This was the first time I had ever seen the man. I can't remember how I responded exactly, but I basically told him he had the wrong person. However, it did freak me out enough that I changed lines in metros a few times. I was on the phone to my partner the whole time after I got on the metro. He followed me at first, at a distance, next car over, but eventually lost track of me. He was unable to describe anything I did after the city center, so I think this was the first time he had followed me beyond my changeover from bus to metro. I did end up safely at home that night, but over an hour late with cold chicken. I told my manager about this as she gave me a personal alarm. I hadn't yet connected it to prior events, so I just let it go thinking it was a one-off. Final event. I was either not at work or on annual leave and only have a vague recollection about hearing about this event. In fact, I had forgotten it entirely until a coworker at the time, a current friend, reminded me. It took place at a vulnerable person's home. 2 of my coworkers were upstairs sorting out medication. They came down to find a man the same ethnicity, and later we confirmed it was the same general description as my stalker. He was sat at the table. The guys we supported were in their rooms, so downstairs had been empty. As you can imagine, they were quite shocked. This was a secure service that protected vulnerable adults. He had managed to bypass multiple doors, all of which were both locked and alarmed. He was just sitting in silence looking around the room. We still don't know how he got in, but he didn't respond to their questions, and after a while just got up and left without saying a word. This obviously got reported, but nothing was really done about it. The company was one of the first I worked for, so I didn't know better, but it's just generally bad. At the time, the other staff assumed he was an agency staff member who maybe had the wrong house and was meant to go to the other service a few doors up. But he didn't present them with identification when asked. I'm not sure why they didn't call the police, because I would have. Shortly after this event, I got offered a new job in a different city, meaning I left the area entirely for about 5 years. I now live back in the same vicinity but different area and with a different name through marriage. I also look a lot different now. I have never seen the man again. I can't prove these events were connected, just that the description of the man was consistent across them all. After the metro incident, I started getting taxis home because I was so afraid, which I still do if I'm out late. I'm now also extra vulnerable as I myself am now disabled. Luckily, I work a 9 to 5 job which is based at home since the pandemic. I have the worst luck, and a good bit of traumatic experiences I've dealt with throughout my life. 2022 was no different, and the year started out awful when the heat lamp from my pet frog caught on fire and started a nasty fire in my bedroom. Due to the smoke damage throughout the house, and me having nowhere to sleep, my parents and I were put into a 2-bedroom suite at a residence inn in the next town over, a quiet medium-sized town with little to no crime while the house was gutted and renovated. We lived in this hotel from January 5th to late October. It's actually a town known for being a more wealthy, stuck-up type. The hotel was nice, but I am used to living in a pretty woodsy and rural neighborhood where I don't hear too much going on. I'm not used to apartment living, but having access to a pool, hot tub, fire pit, and nice propane outdoor kitchen that people rarely use was very nice. About a month after the fire, I ended up getting a part-time job 5 minutes away from the hotel and started dating my coworker. The story starts that my boyfriend and I got out of work around 12 at night, and then hung out with our friend until we decided to all head home at around 12:50. My mom texted me asking where I am, which I didn't reply because I would be there in less than 5 minutes. It was driving, and she would probably see me before I could even enter the hotel through the door near our room, because most nights she would stand out there on the phone with a friend, or on Facebook, drinking a Truly and chain smoking. She mainly did this because she's a night owl, like me, and the walls inside the hotel room were like paper. My dad had to get up every morning at 5 for work, and we would both give her an ear for talking on the phone late at night with friends or watching videos, as no matter what volume she talked at, we could hear her. When I pulled into the parking spot. I walked up to my mom and she starts telling me off for not replying to her quickly enough because something was going on. I asked her what happened because of course we already had witnessed some weird behavior at the hotel before. Basically, when she had gotten home, due to most of the parking spaces up against the building being taken, she parked in the overflow lot for the hotel in a car that was sitting there peeled off as soon as she went in park, with their lights off. She went inside, dropped off her purse and other items, and went outside to smoke and noticed the same car was again parked next to hers Eileen. She told me she had been standing there, drinking her drink, leaning up against the wall, watching videos on her phone when she heard footsteps approach. She looked up and there was a man there who was staring at her, and she stared back. He ended up walking a little bit down the walkway and then raised his fist up at a first floor window and smacked it, possibly attempting to break it. My mom, who unfortunately is not afraid of anything but spiders, yelled, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said something about trying to open a beer bottle. He had no bottle in his hand, and alarm bells were going off for my mom, so she just yelled, "Okay, I'm calling the cops." And he started sprinting down the side of the building away from her and around the corner. My mom started to follow him once he rounded the corner of the building, and when she got to the corner he was gone. There was an older couple, probably late 50s or early 60s, who would frequently sit on the curb by that door that he rounded the corner on drinking, and the woman asks my mom what she thinks is up with that guy, and my mom was like, "I have no clue. Did you see him doing anything?" And the lady then told my mom that he had sat down with them for like an hour, basically being like, "Oh, I have nowhere to stay tonight. I have nowhere to go. I have no money." It was trying to convince them to let him stay in their hotel room tonight. She basically said he was acting cracked out of his mind. Only like 30 seconds has passed when my mom hears his car start and he peels out of the overflow lot again. This time lights on. She walks back over to the door closest to our room and continues smoking. Not even 3 minutes later, he pulls into the overflow lot again and starts walking down the walkway and passes my mom, staring at her. My mom said something like, "This is getting ridiculous. I'm going to call the cops on you." And he just said okay. He kept walking past her. This is at the point where I had pulled into my parking spot and my mom was telling me all of this. I hear footsteps in the parking lot and I see a tall man in khaki shorts and a hoodie walking into the overflow lot, and my mom is telling me that's him. That's him. So I take a video of him in case I need evidence or something. He had apparently been walking around the building again, then got in his car and left again. My mom had called the non-emergency number because we were on the ground floor and she didn't want to try to come back and break one of our windows for our room. The police department is actually across the street from the hotel and they said they would come by and take a look, yet no one has come. I use weed to help me get tired and a bit less anxious for bed. I decided to go to the door on the other side of the building, which was a bit more sheltered, and also because I didn't want my mom to see me smoking weed. Even if she knew I was doing it, it felt weird to be doing it in front of her. I sit down on the curb of the walkway and light up, texting my boyfriend about all of this when I hear a car door close behind me. I look out into the lot and don't see any headlights or anything, but I'm not too worried because again, it's a hotel, lots of people get dropped off and come by late at night. I start scrolling through Twitter and hear a loud roar from a bed. I get up, already shaking, and look around, and I see his Volkswagen Golf parked about 10 feet away from me. The lights in the car are on, and there's a bunch of smoke in the car. He's rooting through stuff in his backseat, making sounds like an animal and just talking gibberish. I immediately call my mom and start walking down to the other end of the building where she is, and she's looking at me head on and tells me to run through the phone and don't look back. Apparently at that point he was walking behind me quickly. By the time I get to her, I turn around and he's already walking back. I'm so shaken my mom said screw this and calls the police this time because it's now been around 35 minutes and no officer has come from just dialing the police department. An officer comes 10 minutes later, which I recorded on my phone, and tells us that she actually had responded to the first call, and at that point he had gone to an ATM, gotten cash, and bought a room for the night at our hotel. She said she personally talked to him herself. She has a bit of an attitude with my mom. I'm now listing this completely based off of the recording. Who after my mom had said, "Do you not see the odd behavior?" And the cop literally went, "It's not illegal to have odd behavior, ma'am. He is a guest to her." And my mom says he's acting like he's on drugs. And the cop said he may be. It's not illegal to be on drugs. It's only illegal to possess them. That was the most outrageous thing I ever heard. If he's high, it's only if he's possessing them that I can take criminal action. To which my mom replies, "Well, clearly if he's high, he's most likely got drugs in his possession. Don't you think?" The cop then basically said she understood my mom's concerns, and while while his behavior is a little bizarre, the attempted window smashing is a he said she said, and because he is now a paying guest she cannot go against the matter any further and leaves. My mom and I are inside for the night in our room, and in my bedroom I kept the window cracked because the air conditioner wasn't the best and I heard him walk around the building time and time again until I eventually fell asleep. When I woke up around 7 in the morning, he was gone. I have so many other creepy stories staying at this place, and it really is shocking if you knew what town it was. I would witness drug deals going down at 3 in the morning when we first started staying there, and I lived on the 3rd floor, people engaging in affairs. One night I had gone over to my aunt's house, which was about 35 minutes away, and on the way home had a friend on the phone to keep me company. I pulled into a parking spot right at the door, and it was around 9:30 at night. I was just sitting there for about 5 minutes when I saw a man's silhouette walking down the walkway slowly, coming closer to my car. I didn't think much of it because people walk their dogs a lot at night or go out to smoke, but then he slowed way down as he got to my car and stood directly in front of the hood, staring at me through the windshield. I stared back, but I couldn't see anything besides the black silhouette and the end of the cigarette lit, and just said to my friend, "There's a guy just standing, like right outside my car staring at me," and she yelled, "Text your dad. Text your dad right now." I'm assuming he had heard my friend, because he then swiftly walked around the corner and disappeared. My dad came running down the stairs. Bless him, because at that point we were on the 3rd floor, and by the time he had come running out the man was gone. At that point, my parents wouldn't even let myself out at the pool and hot tub area by myself anymore because they noticed that the hotel was being used for human trafficking with pimps and so on. They wanted me to text them as soon as I arrived to the hotel and not dilly-dally in the parking lot. Just get inside and keep a close eye on my surroundings. Again, really surprising for that area. I'm thankful I'm back in my house, where the only sounds I hear at night are bears or raccoons trying to root through my trash, and I hope I never have to live in a hotel ever again. Background information: this happened at a travel hockey tournament. I've never had an experience like this before, so it was shocking as somebody who has been playing for 13 years. At the time I was a 13-year-old girl. However, at 13 I gained the privilege of being able to walk around in public without having an adult's eyes on me 24/7. In hindsight, probably not the best decision of my dad. I was on a team this year and all of the kids were 13 to 14 years old. We were headed down nearby DC for a tournament in December. Our team manager booked a hotel that was in the projects. I'm talking hearing a gunshot and seeing abandoned houses nearby when I pulled into the parking lot of this hotel. This was already a red flag, but I continued to unload my suitcase from my dad's truck and grab my backpack too. As we were headed towards the doors of the hotel, I heard a man behind me calling some girl's name. I think he was screaming Annie or something that sounded like that. I turned around just to see if he was anywhere near us, and he was standing next to a large pillar connected to the hotel. This man had bloodshot red eyes and was definitely on some sort of substance. I decided to start walking faster, and my dad must have thought the same thing as me because we started hightailing it to the hotel doors. Less than a minute had passed once we reached the hotel doors, probably about 10 seconds. I decided to look back to see if this man was still there, but he disappeared. Eventually my teammates all texted the group chat saying they had arrived and they were hanging down in the lobby. I rushed to the elevator to go join them. I clicked the start button which leads to the lobby, but when the door opened, it wasn't the lobby. The elevator had taken me to the basement. I was frightened because it kind of looked like the back rooms except tile flooring, with some 60s music playing faintly. I took a peek outside the elevator door and there was absolutely nobody in sight. I tried the start button again, absolutely horrified from that. I didn't feel myself go up or down. The door opened to the basement again. I figured maybe the start button was the basement and it was just different from other hotels. Maybe I just had made a mistake and was supposed to press floor 1 to get to the lobby. I hit the floor 1 button. This time it took me to a hallway. The button led me to the first floor of hotel rooms, still not taking me to the lobby. At this point I started to get confused and an eerie feeling overcame me. I decided to head back onto the elevator, go to my floor, the 3rd floor, and walk down the stairs. I knew my entire team was roomed on the 3rd floor, so I felt more comfortable walking down the stairs from there. I went up to floor 3 and got off of the elevator. On my way to the stairs I saw weird crumbs in front of a hotel door and bent down to take a look at what it was. It was weed on the floor. I was kind of taken aback a bit and fell back. The person on the inside must have heard me because the door opened. The crazy man from the parking lot was the one behind the door. After seeing this, I bolted to the stairwell and ran down the stairs. I was running so fast that I was skipping some steps. I even ended up accidentally tripping at one point, but I got up as fast as my little legs could carry me. I made it down to the lobby and my team saw me in a panic. They all asked me what's wrong and I explained my story. I got a few looks from them and they probably thought I was delusional. But one of the boys convinced the whole team to follow me onto the elevator so I could show them in person what happened. I clicked the start button and lo and behold, behold, the door reopened without any movement from the elevator. This was the same elevator and same button I had pressed previously. I still have no explanation behind this. The weekend ended up continuing but being completely normal until we had to leave for our last game. We all were standing in the lobby about to leave. We walked out into the parking lot to see that one of the cars had been broken into, and it was my teammate's. This car had a back window that was pretty big, so you could see what was inside of the trunk. Well, turns out that somebody had broken into the vehicle thinking it was full of something valuable. The only thing left behind in the trunk was both of my teammates' sticks, so he definitely wasn't looking for equipment. Jokes on him though, because hockey equipment smells absolutely rancid, and he probably had a not so nice surprise when opening up the bag. The hotel workers actually checked the cameras, and guess who it showed? The crazy man from the parking lot. So crazy man, let's not meet. If you're liking this video, all I ask is that you make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. I've been holding onto this story for years now and would like to finally get it off my chest. So my sibling and I lived close to an elementary school where we would often go to walk our dog in the playing field in crop of woods, or we would let our dog roam around while we played on the playground or made pretend in the woods. I think I was around 14 when this happened, about 10 years ago. This schoolyard had a playing field, a playground near the building, and a playground farther away from the building in a crop of trees. We were swinging on the swing set at this more distant playground, but from this play area you can clearly see residential streets and the parking lot of the school, which kind of all wrap around the crop of forest. As we are swinging, I see an SUV drive up one of the roads and pull into the parking lot. It's a weekend, so there is no other cars around and not very many people, maybe the odd passerby also walking their dog through the school grounds. The SUV is about 40 meters or 130 feet away from where we are, and I wear glasses, so I can't see very well what the people look like as they exit the car, but I can see some distinct clothing pieces. There are 3 people. 2 look older and are dressed as if they are older middle-aged, like in their 50s. I remember one of these people was wearing a wide-brimmed women's sun hat. The third person looks like an older teen or young adult in his 20s and is wearing a green and white striped jersey and cleats. It is not uncommon for people to walk or drive to the school to use its field for play or sport practice, though looking back now I realize it is odd they parked in this lot and not on the side of the road nearer to the field, which is on the opposite side of the property. In any case, I think okay, just some grandparents and their grandson going to practice in the field and go about playing with my sibling. I remember watching the trio walk away around the school building, completely opposite to where we were on the property. We have our dog with us, and after a time we decide to stop swinging and take the dog on a walk through the trails in the forest brush. Maybe 15 to 20 minutes have passed since the car pulled up. The brush we are walking in is basically in the very corner of the school property. There is a metal chain link fence in front of us, and beyond it is the sidewalk, a residential road. To our right is another fence which separates people's backyards from the school grounds. These homes all have tall trees growing along the school fence for added privacy, so it's almost impossible for anyone to see into the schoolyard. My sibling and I were just at that age where playing pretend didn't really feel genuine and spur of the moment, like we were about to grow out of it. I'm feeling bored but don't want to go home yet, so I pick a branch of these red berries that grow in the schoolyard and say to my sibling, hey, wanna play a game? Which was our code for let's play pretend, and I bend down to offer the berries to my dog as a starting point for the game. They've never heard her. I'm still speaking to my sibling, who is walking in front of me as I bend down, but my voice trails off as I see my dog's behavior. She is completely ignoring the berries and me, and is instead moving past me slowly, ears back and nose pointed, as if she is approaching something. I follow her movements, still looking down, and when I finally look up, there are the 3 people from the SUV not 2 meters, 6 feet in front of me. They are certainly not a couple of grandparents and a kid, but 3 grown men. I remember the faces of the 2 older men pretending to be grandparents. The foremost man had short white hair and a white scruff of facial hair. His mouth was open in a faint shape as he breathed quietly and focused on keeping his steps light. The other man was extremely thin, his cheekbones popping out in shoulder length, greasy brown hair hung around his skeletal features. They had crept up behind my sibling and I silently, and remained just as quiet as they all turned their backs quickly and pretend to point off into the trees like they were bird watching or something. It was bizarre how silent the whole encounter was. I immediately realized we need to get out of there and turn my attention back to my sibling as I grab my dog's collar and get her hooked up to the leash. My My sibling is about a foot from me but seems oblivious still to the 3 creeps in the woods right behind us. I tell them over and over that we need to leave, but they become wrapped up in the imaginary game I proposed moments ago. Finally, they see the men. I never look back at the creeps, only to my sibling. My sibling also stops talking and starts walking with me. Thankfully, an opening in the fence between these now haunted woods and the road is only a few meters ahead, and we get some distance and obstacles between us and these creeps. To my frustration, my sibling wants to stop on the sidewalk and pick some more berries through the fence, and I frantically tell them to come on. Let's go. I still never look back towards the men, my vision tunneling to the safety of the open roads and sidewalks and homes in front of us. We get home without incident, at least to my knowledge. Had the men followed us on foot, gone back to their car and followed, or simply gave up, I didn't care. I just wanted to get home, which was only a couple blocks away. When we got home, I broke down as I told my mom what happened, and I remember her reaction being kind of nonchalant. I had always been an anxious child, and she had developed a habit of downplaying things in a kind of exposure therapy way. I realized I still didn't feel fully safe with this reaction and retreated to my basement to cry alone. In recounting the story with my mom years later, she said she did call the police, but nothing came of it. I am also very thankful for my dog, as it is likely she saved the lives of myself and my sibling that day. This story happened to be back when I still lived at my parents' house. I was commuting to college at the time and had 3 siblings that also lived at home, my brother and 2 sisters. For some context, we lived on 5 acres in rural Ohio, surrounded on both sides by woods and farm fields. Additionally, during the week, my dad normally left for work at 2 in the morning, so I had always felt like it my job to be the man of the house because he was gone during the times when you would imagine something sketchy happening. However, on this night, because it was the weekend, my dad was home. I woke up to the sound of my brother's voice trying to get my attention. We had separate rooms upstairs, and coming out of our rooms you could look down over the banister and to see our front door. When I woke up, it took a few moments to get out of the haze and realize what was going on. I looked at the clock and it was around 2:30 in the morning, and my brother told me there were 2 men at our front door. Now this really woke me up. They quietly walk out of my room and peek over to look down at the front door. When we looked, there was no one at the door, but I noticed my parents off to the side, out of view of the glass on the front door. I whispered down to my dad, and he told me there were 2 guys who had been talking to each other and knocking on the door. Hearing my dad say this freaked me out even more. I went back into my room and grabbed my pistol, quickly shuffling down the stairs after looking to make sure they weren't at the door. If they had been, they would have easily seen me coming down the stairs as it is in direct view of the door. My brother is right behind me as we head over to where my parents are, whispering to try and find out what is going on. My parents had awoken to the sound of our dog barking and had come out to find these 2 men knocking loudly at the door. At this point, the men return and begin knocking again, despite the fact that no one had come to the door and our dog was still actively barking. The fact that they were there at this time, in a location where houses are spread out hundreds of yards, and still knocking with a dog barking, made the situation even more terrifying. After a couple of minutes, the men walked away, and we all shuffle across the kitchen into the family room to peek out the windows into our driveway, which is lit up by our outside light. There was a black Cadillac sitting there, but no one was inside from what we could see. Immediately the question was, where did these guys go? They weren't in their car and they were no longer at the front door. Unfortunately, we figured out the answer when the handles on our back French door started jiggling. They were actively trying to enter the back of our house, which enters into the kitchen. At this point, I just remember my mom frantically saying David to my dad as pure terror overwhelmed her. Then 2 things happened. Adrenaline filled my body as I prepared my handgun, horrified at the very real possibility that I might have to shoot these men. Secondly, my dad finally grabbed the phone, called the police, and calmly told them what was happening. Thankfully, after a minute of jiggling, they stopped at the back door and disappeared again, only to return to their knocking at the front. However, at this point, several minutes had gone by and suddenly we saw the local police fly up in multiple cruisers with their lights on. As they whipped into our driveway and front yard, the 2 men bolted away, attempting to run the long way around the house across the driveway. One of them disappeared out of our view, but the other one was intercepted by an officer yelling for him to get on the ground. He didn't, and he was immediately tased and fell on the ground. Some of the officers went around the house after the other guy, and one of them came to talk to my dad and I as we came out the front. They ended up finding the other man hiding in my sister's little playhouse in the backyard. It appears both of them were drunk and or high, as the one who hid had cocaine on him. While they were both arrested that night, we never did find out what they were charged with or what happened to them. Needless to say, the whole experience wasn't fun, so random men at our door in the middle of the night, let's not meet again. My parents had purchased a condo about 10 minutes from their home around the time my older brother was born, with the intention that my siblings and I had the option of renting it when we become of age. I moved in alongside my brother a few weeks after my 18th birthday, exhilarated by the freedom from our childhood home, which had become laden with traumatic memories over the years. The move took 2 or 3 days, and we had a U-Haul coming in and out of the driveway during that time. My first day of college occurred a few days later. I had a full schedule 3 days a week, which I would later regret, with my last class getting out at 6 in the afternoon. The city I live in is notorious for heavy traffic, and I would not get home until roughly an hour and a half later, despite the university being less than 15 miles away. The sun was mostly down by the time I turned into my street, and there were a few people, some accompanied and well known, taking their evening strolls. There was nothing remarkable about it. The driveway was occupied, so I parked on the street and made my way home. The following day, I got off my closing shift at 9 at night. It was dark by the time I got home, and there was a man walking on the strip of sidewalk that faces the condo. I would not have noticed that he was the lone man from the evening before if it was not for him wearing the same outfit: a bright yellow hoodie, black nylon track pants with white pinstripes, gray Nike trainers, and a tan baseball cap. As I got out of my car, we shared a quick glance and continued on our ways. 2 days later, I got off my closing shift and picked my, now ex-boyfriend up for a date. We went back to the condo so that I could change, and in the dark, I saw the man again, wearing the same outfit and on the same strip of sidewalk. It's him again. I sounded more surprised than suspicious, and my boyfriend was confused. I explained that I had been seeing him walking around and that he was always wearing the same thing. We got out of the car and stared at him, our bodies turned toward him. He ducked behind a car, now properly freaked out. We got back in my car and watched him get into his and drive away with his lights off. It was too dark and he was too far away for us to catch a license plate. At this point, I was not sure if this man even lived in the neighborhood. We went about our night, and I dropped my boyfriend back off at his parents' house. He told me to call him and or the police if I saw the man again, and I agreed. I got home around midnight. The man was a street away from his usual spot, crouching below a tree and hugging his knees under his chin. I drove past him and noticed a different man in a blue flannel and jeans approaching a street light. He got under the illuminating glow and pulled his phone out, attempting to make a call. I was unsure if the two men had any association with each other until I looked back over at the yellow hoodie man. He was no longer under the tree. He was also under a street light a few meters away from the tree. His back was turned to me, but it appeared as though he was taking a call. As I looked back and forth between the two men, it became pretty obvious that they were communicating with each other. I drove away and called the police. They told me to stay where I was or go to another safe location, and that they would contact me when the matter was taken care of. I dozed off and was awoken maybe an hour later by the promised phone call. I was told that neither of the two men were residents of the area, and that they were simply told not to come back on reports of suspicious activity. After being advised to call again if they came back, I went home. I was tired enough that I had no trouble sleeping for a little while. Around 4 in the morning, I was sharply roused by the metal screen door rattling against its frame. The force slowly grew in intensity, and eventually, the walls and floor were quaking. I peeked through the blinds at my second-story window, which overlooks the front door, and of course, saw the man in the yellow hoodie aggressively attempting to open the screen door. I was shaking in my boots on my mattress, which was still on the floor as I had not yet purchased a bed frame. I received a call from my equally bewildered brother who was in his room. I told him to call my dad while I called the police. It has now been almost 4 years, and I can assure you all that my street smarts have markedly improved. Alright, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But as always,
Have a nice day.